Before we begin today, I want to invite you into this moment to listen, not just with your ears, but with your hearts. Today's episode is one of purpose, one of courage, and one of a legacy that continues to change lives around the world. Before it became a movement, before it became a foundation, there was a brave little girl. A little girl with a simple idea in the middle of an unimaginable fight. She didn't ask for toys. She didn't ask for games. She asked for a lemonade stand. And what started as something small would go on to change the fight against childhood cancer forever. This episode will be told in two parts. First, we'll explore the incredible mission and impact of Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, an organization that has become a powerful force in the fight against childhood cancer. And then we'll step into the deeply personal story of a mother whose journey reflects the very reality this mission was built to change. Welcome to A Hope for a Cure podcast, episode 5, part 1. When Life Gave Her Lemons, the story of Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. How one little girl changed the fight against childhood cancer. The legacy of Alexandra Alex Scott. Jason, I can't believe we're already on episode 5.
I know. Episode 5 already. Unbelievable. And every episode just reminds me why these stories matter so much.
And the stories that the show, they really resonate with people. You know, when we first started, we were hoping that this would happen. And now that it's happening, it's a pretty good feeling. Hey guys, welcome to A Hope for a Cure podcast. I'm Latanya Morrison.
And I'm Jason Collins. Thanks for tuning in.
And before we start today's episode, Jason, I just want to take a moment to talk about something that's incredibly important to families battling pediatric cancer across the country. I think in a few episodes back, Jason and I shared that we are advocating for pediatric cancer to become a national health emergency. And just the difference in having this horrible disease become a national health emergency, it would create so much additional funding and additional clinical trials, funding for research and the different institutions, and just for everyone, including our government, to act with urgency that these children deserve, that these families deserve. Every breakthrough in pediatric cancer research, it begins with someone deciding that our children deserve more. And getting pediatric cancer declared a national health emergency, that's the more that we're talking about. So as we go along, we will be requesting for all of you to reach out to your elected officials and let them know we want them to declare pediatric cancer as a national emergency. Ain't that right, Jason?
Yes, ma'am. That's right. And today's conversation reminds us exactly why that fight matters. Our guest represents an organization that has helped change the landscape of pediatric cancer research around the world.
please help us welcome to the show Trish Atkins. Welcome, Trish.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jess, we're so honored to have you with us today.
Well, it's great. It's really special to be here.
And as always, we're going to give the spotlight to the story. Latanya and I will turn off our cameras and let Trish have the floor. Thank you again, Trish, for doing this. Tell us about superhero Alex.
So Alex was just under a year old when she was diagnosed with neuroblastoma. I think her first surgery was actually the evening before her birthday, and she emerged from the OR as it was rolling over to midnight on her first birthday. Neuroblastoma is a childhood cancer that affects mostly young children, like Alex's age, babies, and can cause tumors throughout the body. She tried treatments over and over again. And finally, one treatment actually made her feel better. She was around 3 or 4 years old, and she told her mom, Liz, she wanted to hold a lemonade stand. And Liz was like, okay, well, what do you want? You have everything you need. Like, what do you want? Thinking this was like she wanted to get a bike or a doll or a toy. And that wasn't what Alex wanted. Alex wanted to raise money for doctors because she knew she felt better. And she thought if she could raise more money, she could help other kids feel better. So she had her first stand at 4 years old in her front yard in Connecticut, and she raised, I think, $2,000, which
Wow.
is incredible. That was also in 2004, I think. No, wait, 2000. It was in the year 2000. So $2,000 is so much money then. And it's wild to think how much the foundation has then grown since then. Alex continued over the next 4 years to hold lemonade stands in her front yard, and the story spread. They moved to the Scott family moved to Philadelphia for treatment to be at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and access some of the treatments there that weren't available in Connecticut. She held her lemonade stand at her home in suburban Philadelphia, and the local newspapers started to cover it. The national news started to cover it. She was on
Wow.
Oprah. she Her story spread, and other people were inspired by it and started sending letters and hosting lemonade stands, and there'd be lines around the block for this
Wow.
cause, which is incredible. And that is how it all began, just with a lemonade stand and a little girl who thought, you know what, I feel better and I want my friends to feel better too.
You've been with Alex Lemonade Stand Foundation for nearly 11 years as a science writer. What first drew you to that mission, professionally and personally?
It was definitely personal first. My oldest daughter, Lily, was diagnosed in 2006 with a brain tumor called ependymoma. And while Lily was in the hospital, it was Lemonade Days. She was diagnosed in May. Every year in June, Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation hosts Lemonade Days. Alex had been dead, for a few years, and Liz was speaking there. Alex's mom, was speaking at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, about Lemonade Days. I didn't want to listen to her talk. I was upstairs in the ICU with Lily. It was probably, I mean, it was horrible. It's horrible. You feel like you're on a battlefield and you don't have a gun. You like maybe have some sticks or rocks. You don't, it's terrifying to be there. So it was Lemonade Days. Liz Scott speaking. I didn't want to listen to her speak because I thought, here's this woman who has lost everything. I don't want to hear it. I feel like I'm on the verge of losing everything. I didn't want to go. My husband's like, no, this foundation's so great. He had known about Alex's Lemonade Stand from the news, and I was just like, I don't want to do it. But I went down begrudgingly. I went down to the atrium and I'm like, I will just walk through. I'll get a cup of coffee. I'll make my husband stop bothering me. And as I was walking down, I heard Liz's voice say, well, there's so much hope because there's research. And it stopped me because up until that point, everyone had told me how little research there was. Doctors would say, well, we don't know, we don't know. And here was this woman who had lost everything, who had like lived through what my greatest fears were, And she said, "Oh no, that's wrong. Like we're doing this." And that changed everything for me. Like that day, I never had coffee. I bought all the lemonade and I thought, this is it. I went upstairs. My husband thought I was crazy. He saw my arms full of like lemonade and t-shirts. And he was like, right now, like we're not working. Like,
Mhm.
what are you doing? Like spending everything on lemonade. I'm like, no, this is it. This is what we have to do. And Lily was just 14 months old, and we were, we still had many months of her treatments. But we decided as soon as we felt stable, we would host our first lemonade stand. And then we did. Lily was 3. My middle daughter was around. She was just a baby. And we held our first lemonade stand. And for our family, that was it. And then a few years later, Alex's was hiring for a part-time writer. And I thought, I can do this. And I had always written about science and written about healthcare. I came there and that wasn't what they actually hired me to do. They wanted me to write some website content. I was like, no, I want to write about your science. And that's what brought me there was the science and the science, not just because I love science, but the science because I love that science is helping all of our kids and finding cures.
Wow.
For listeners who may not know, can you share how one little lemonade stand became a global force in childhood cancer research?
I Alex's story is so amazing because it's a little girl. And you think of a 4-year-old hosting this lemonade stand who's sick, who has lost her hair because of chemotherapy, who is struggling to walk because of where her tumors were.
Mm.
And here she is having this lemonade stand because she just wants everyone to feel better. Like it's so genuine, it's so sweet.
Mm.
But then everyone's coming out and you start to see, her family and the world start to see how this works, how together, whether you donated a quarter or whether you donated $250,000, how it all is pulling together to help kids. I think there's something so incredible and important and addictive about hope in a good way. And it is easy to feel dismal and down when the world is tough. And it's easy to turn away. Before Lily was diagnosed, like my story, I didn't want to go and listen to this story about kids who died from cancer. I just like didn't get it. But when you listen and you hear it's not about kids dying from cancer, it's not about kids hurting, it's about kids helping. It's about the kids with cancer helping their families, their friends, their siblings. You realize it's something that you can be a part of because you just give of what you can and it all adds up together. I think that's kind of the emotional way it worked, but in the very real logistic way, it worked because the foundation was dedicated from the beginning to funding research for all children. It wasn't just for neuroblastoma, it wasn't just for some cancers, it was for all cancers and has really held on to the principle that the best way to help childhood cancer researchers is to help fill the gaps they have in funding, to fill the gaps there are in federal research funding, to fill the gaps created by pharmaceutical companies not investing as much in childhood cancer because it is a rare disease. And to really be smart about it and to lean on those researchers who are working in the field for their expertise and advisement into, making cures possible and, saying like, this is the kind of research that has to be funded and this is where it has to happen. And just keep moving and staying true to sort of, Alex said, like, I think if we all work together, we can do it and continuing to keep that spirit alive, that it is about all of us working together.
Absolutely.
What do you think made Alex's story resonate with so many people around the world?
I think I can speak really directly as a childhood cancer mom. I think for me, Alex's story resonated because when your child's diagnosed with cancer, some of the things you hear right away are like, well, we don't know. There isn't research. Well, this is the treatment we give, but we don't know if it'll work. It's 50-50. We're going to do the best we can. You hear all of these things and you're like, no, that's unacceptable. This is my baby. Like, you can't. And I think when you hear Alex's story, there's so much empowerment. It's like, yes, we don't know, but we can know. Yes, there isn't research, but we're going to do it and we're going to figure it out. And all of that empowerment really helps you get through. It's like what you need to hold on to go through dark times. And I think that just resonates with so many people, no matter what they're going through. I see like when my kids were little and have lemonade stands, their friends would want to have them, or then their friends would want to have them for another cause. Because I
Mm,
think it's that empowerment that resonated with them too. Like, oh, I want to help all the puppies at the shelter. I can have a lemonade stand. I can do it. It's something that
Mm.
I can do. And it's like I can't go to a lab and research. I could talk about it, but I certainly couldn't do it. I don't know how to do that. I can't operate. I don't know how to put an IV in, but I can, you know, tell people about the science, and I can help my kids set up a lemonade stand in the front yard, and then I'm doing something. And empowerment is so like being able to do something when you're in what seems like an impossible time. I always feel it's like so curative to know that that's what you can do. That you can do it. You can. You don't have to be beaten down. You don't have to feel like you've just brought like sticks to the battlefield. You've brought what you have. You've brought all of your weapons and all of your incredible energy, and you can do something.
From your front row seat as a science writer, what are some of the most exciting breakthroughs that you've witnessed at ALSF?
There are so many things that have shifted and changed. I think when Lily was diagnosed in 2007, it was still surgery, chemo, and radiation. Right then, there were new types of radiation that they were working on, which is incredible, like proton radiation and other targeted radiation, which makes such a difference for kids because their bodies are little and developing. So these treatments are harsh. Since then, through research that Alex's has funded and also, other collaborative funders all over, there has been so many advances in immunotherapy, specifically CAR T cell immunotherapy, which has just like exploded. There has been advances in precision medicine and targeted therapeutics that are not just targeting like, oh, you have this tumor, so, like chemotherapy, like you have this tumor, this works, this just kills all the cells. Like there are therapies that have been used to target certain, different like genetic drivers of cancer. And then I think another amazing thing that I've seen happen are there more clinical trials in more locations. So kids can access these treatments, and researchers also have access to like these kids that, they want to help, and they also need to study and understand so like science and medicine can get better and find better cures.
For our viewers' information, please tell us who Lily is to you.
Oh, well, Lily is my firstborn daughter. She is my hero. She's my heart. And she is just this incredible survivor. And I talk about her. I can't help but tear up when I think about how far that she's come. Sorry.
No, no, you're good. You said there has been cures since you've been there. Can you share what that means to your family or what it means for families?
Yeah. When your child's diagnosed with cancer, you feel really alone. And then you realize that you're not alone because there's all of these other families that have been diagnosed, and they become your family. You meet them at clinics, you meet them through childhood cancer events, you meet them on the internet, you meet them in Facebook groups, and they're your family and you're invested in their stories. And when one of those children die, you are devastated because you are rooting for them. You are searching, you are staying up late with a mom that you've only talked to in a Facebook group, and you're helping her look through clinical trials. You're searching, you're looking, you're asking around with her. You're all in it together, and she does the same for you. And then on the flip side, when you find out a child who, treatments failed, and then they get to this clinical trial and they're not only alive, but they're thriving and they're cancer free and they're side effect free. It's such a victory when it happens. It is everything that you've hoped for happens, and it proves time and time again that these are things that are possible through science and through working together.
What makes Alex Lemonade Stand Foundation unique in how it funds and advances research?
Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation funds research from really early career, even student researchers through a post-grant program, all the way up through researchers that are at, maybe they're even towards the end of their career. They're at the highest level. It fills in all the gaps all along. It helps fund projects that the large federal grants like would not fund, but it provides this funding that creates the data, proves the concept and allows those researchers to then get that exponential funding from, these giant federal grants, and also even to get industry partnership from pharmaceutical companies who make the drugs and power, what ultimately goes to market to be available for kids. It also, Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation also has a robust and highly qualified, incredible scientific advisory board that, reviews grants, drives the direction of the types of grants that we should offer and the categories that should be filled. And it works to just fill all of those. I know I said it before, but really works to fill those gaps and those spots where things are missing. Like, even it, like whether it's that early stuff or like I said before, some of the later stuff, like through our Crazy Eight Grants initiative that really looks to fund these like big giant problems that have big giant solutions that no one has funded before. It makes it possible. What also makes the foundation unique is the collaboration that it encourages and facilitates. I think pediatric oncologists are always collaborative. They're treating children, they're treating rare diseases. They have to work together. They have to be friends, they have to call each other. And I think they've always done that. But Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation has facilitated it more through some grant categories that are collaborative, meaning that they'll fund researchers on one team at multiple institutions, which isn't something that typically happens with most scientific grants. So they can find the best of the best and build the team with the best expertise. And that expertise isn't necessarily, at the same hospital. It might be at a hospital in Austria, or it might be at a hospital in Michigan. They also encourage collaboration and make it happen through bringing together their grantees for a couple different scientific meetings a year where they can sit in a room and present their research and ask about the research and challenge each other and provide solutions. And all of that is so critically important because it just goes back to how Alex's began. It's all about us all working together. So they really work towards making sure that can happen in science as well.
For families currently in the fight, what hope does ALSF offer that maybe didn't exist 10, 20 years ago?
There are more clinical trials in more locations, which is really important. And I think for families who, as they enter treatment, if they receive the same information that, we're not sure, we don't know, knowing that if whatever frontline treatment doesn't work, knowing that there are options and maybe options close to home that exist is really important. For some types of childhood cancer, when they're diagnosed now, their treatment looks vastly different than it did before Alex's Lemonade Stand. There are, more targeted treatments available. There are different immunotherapies that they use frontline. There is more widespread, not completely 100%, but let me restart that. There's more widespread use of genetic testing to look at tumors and to understand what drives them to help guide some treatment decisions, you know, at the start of treatment versus, after they've maybe been through some cycles of treatment and have to turn to a clinical trial. And that is such a game changer. I remember my own daughter was diagnosed getting all of those, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know, and being like, how is this even possible? I think now for parents, it's not any less scary, but I think I think there's better options and more hope and more things that clinicians can communicate and share with them at diagnosis.
What would Alex think if she could see the impact of that very first lemonade stand today?
Gosh, it's hard. I think one thing when I think about Alex is I always try to remind myself that she was a little girl. She created something that's so big and seems so adult, because it is. The foundation is, incredible. But she was 8 when she passed away. She was just a little girl. And so when I think about 8, I think that she would just think it was really cool. And I also think she would be like, I told you so, maybe to her mom. I never met Alex. I never, sometimes I feel like I know her personally, but I never met her. But I mean, I think she probably was like, yeah, I know. Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go play. I'm 8,